welcome to the Love, Discovery, and Dim Sum podcast. Hey. All right, you want to do it?
Welcome to the Love, Discovery, and Dim Sum podcast.
All right, I'll let you do it because I know I normally do the intro, so...
Oh, well, ladies
I'm
first,
an intro
I guess.
hog. Anyways, one of the things that we get asked a lot when we do our Finding Cleveland experiences, when we show our short film about your family's discovery about the Chinese in Mississippi, and we get asked, like, hey, how do I trace my roots? Because that's one of the things that's happened is we've inspired other people to go trace their roots. And then a lot of people don't actually really know too much about their heritage. I mean, you didn't even know about your father's side of the family.
No.
Because your dad grew up without a father. And so this has been kind of a mystery until we found Cleveland.
I mean, I thought I would never know. I think our whole family just were like, okay, we'll never know. Let's move on.
Like so 4 years ago, we went to Cleveland, Mississippi, and our short film is about what happened in less than 48 hours. And we just thought we were going to visit a gravesite. That's all you do, right? Like you only knew that you had a grandfather
somewhere
buried there.
Buried there. Yep.
And that's all you knew.
Yeah.
And then eventually you saw a picture and you're like, okay, well, we know what the gravestone looks like. Somebody took a picture and that was what we went through.
And eventually that just led to us meeting a whole bunch of people who knew people who knew people who knew us.
Right. And so a lot of people are asking, and they might be wondering, like, how did you start? Like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
What's funny is your brother actually said, I don't really know where this is. Why don't we just go and we'll just drive around town? And it's like, it can't be that big of a town. We just go to every single cemetery and like try to find this gravestone.
And that's actually...
We probably could have done it.
It's just investigative,
right.
Like go to the source.
But it just would have taken a lot of time to do that. But the other thing that he told us is he was inspired by the Parks and Recreation, the TV show with Amy Poehler, which was one of my favorite shows too. And if you're not familiar with the show, it's basically talking about the employees at City Hall in Pawnee, Indiana, and
which is really
it's
right
a small
here.
town. Yeah, they filmed it. They filmed
right
the
here,
Pawnee
right around the corner.
City Hall in Pasadena. Here, it's a stand-in. It's like a large city that's standing in for this small city hall of the small town in Indiana. And your brother was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna." Call City Hall. It's not like LA, like where they probably pick up the phone and maybe they can answer some questions. And so his instincts were very, very right because he called City Hall and they actually were very helpful in directing him to the different cemeteries to try to look through the records. They also gave him the information about the local Chinese Heritage Museum in Mississippi, which was a huge key thing because it's like, oh, you're Chinese, you're looking for your Chinese ancestors. Hey, check out the museum. You might want to go there. And then that was like a very, very key thing for him to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people ask, well, how do you start? That's certainly one way to start. Go to the last place that you can trace back to and hopefully search some local records there, and hopefully if it's a small enough town you can just ask people.
Well, even if it's a large town, like people don't realize, like our government actually keeps really good records. That's the thing I was really surprised about, right? Like there's census records, you saw manifest records, ship manifests. When it ended up starting to do some more research online, even especially nowadays, you've got ancestry.com, you've got familysearch.org, you've got a lot of websites that you can actually input people's names.
Yeah, and by the way, we're not endorsing all of these, but obviously, if you work for one of those and you want to endorse us, please call us.
We would love a sponsorship for our podcast and for our Finding Cleveland experiences. But, that's the thing is there's a lot of resources online that are free. Some of them are paid, but like here's a little tip for like Ancestry. Like you can go to some libraries that have a subscription and use it for free at the library to do your search.
Yeah, a lot of libraries have a subscription already, so you just go there. But I think one of the things, the questions, that one of the hard things for us was we did not know how to search the names, because we didn't know how to spell the names.
Right.
See, in our case, it was, everything's spelled in English, but the names are in Chinese, and then you have all the different ways people spelled it. Tried to accurately spell it phonetically. Right,
because your grandfather's name was K.C. Liu, but that's not his legal name. That was just like an abbreviation. Right. And your great-grandfather he went by Charlie Liu, but that wasn't his legal name. It was his Chinese name. And even then it was like...
And Liu wasn't even his real family name.
Right, because it was Chiu
Jong Lu.
and they thought Lu was the last name because in Chinese the surnames come first
Right.
in Chinese. So you
Somebody,
would be.
I don't even know how he got the name Charlie. He must
So
have just,
your Chinese name is Chiu Bo Wing.
basically like
You would be
Baldwin.
like Mr. Wing if they
Yeah.
they did it
Right.
incorrectly,
That's
right?
My name would be like
You'd be Wing. You'd
Mr.
be
Wing.
You'd be
Weird.
CB Wing because KC Lu, right? Like you'd be
I
CB
guess-
Wing,
I
Chiu Bo
guess so.
Wing.
Yeah, that'd be CB Wing. That's
So,
funny.
anyway.
Okay. Get the spellings like.
And try alternate spellings if you've got an Asian. Actually, even with European names, sometimes again the
Yeah, because we
immigration
all
office.
know English doesn't really always spell the right way. In the same
Not everybody
way.
knows the right German spelling or the right Russian spelling of someone's surname.
Maybe it doesn't really start with an F. Maybe it's a PH.
Right,
Maybe it's a
exactly.
K and not a C.
Like Coach K from Duke, Mike Krzyzewski.
Coach K. Yeah.
Yes, it's Krzyzewski and it starts with a K.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eastern European names. Yeah.
See.
So that's exactly right. Like you may not, your immigration officer may have spelled it wrong. So it's important to do.
You might have spelled it wrong.
Yeah, you might have spelled it wrong. You're the one that's worse at spelling. Anyway, so the immigration officer might have flipped the last name and the first name. So it's important to like enter that. If you have an idea of like birth dates, marriage dates, death dates, like all those things are like records. Like if there's a marriage record, there's a death certificate, a birth certificate. A lot of these like city halls, counties, they have a lot of these records. Something that I didn't think of to look at was obituaries
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and searching newspapers. And so we found a family that had your grandfather's obituary when we went to Mississippi. But then later on, I'm like, wait a second, if he had an obituary, that meant your great-grandfather had an obituary. And so I looked at newspapers.com, and there's a few other, websites, newspaperarchive.com, even like Library of Congress has a Chronicling America is their newspaper archive project. Search the name. If you've got an approximate date, you can even do a range. And it's interesting because we ended up finding not only your great grandfather's obituary, we ended up finding like there was a lawsuit that he was involved in. There was like an article in the local paper. The other crazy thing that we found through like searching the newspapers, there was an article about how your grandfather actually was in China when your great-grandfather died, and they had to put your great-grandfather on ice for 5 months so that your grandfather could come back in time for the funeral.
Huh.
And in fact, the reason why he was supposed to take a plane back from China, but because of the Sino-Japanese war that was going on in China, he ended up getting on a ship, and so it took a lot longer.
You found all that just
from
going
a
through the
newspaper article.
Was it
Yeah.
newspaper.com or something?
Yeah, it was newspapers.com. It was crazy. Like, I couldn't believe this whole article actually knew the whole background, exactly like why your grandfather couldn't come back and had to wait 5 months before they could bury your great-grandfather.
Yeah, and I think even the National Archives, I think, we talked last time about how, the National Archives has history about the Chinese because they had Chinese exclusion files. But I think they actually have files for not just the Asians. There's those time frames where whenever anybody went to another country or left, they still had to have some sort of immigration, especially post 1882.
Right.
They had more documentations of who's coming and who's leaving.
Yeah, if you came from Russia, and there are multiple national archives. So there's the national archives. I mean, they're all called National Archives Records Administration, but there's the one in D.C. And those tend to carry the more federal, records. I think a lot of the older, before 1940, the census records are in there. And then there's the regional archives, which the one in San Bruno, San Francisco is the one we found. Most of anybody that came through Angel Island, their records are stored there, but
Right.
there's archives all over the country.
Yeah,
so if you
Seattle.
go to their website, you can try to look for, I think it's archive.gov. You could try to look for different, it'll tell you different records that they hold, but you'd be surprised of what you can find.
And they're constantly digitizing.
Right, so some stuff that you don't even have to go in to check. Because, we actually had to go in with sign up for a little free ID, almost like a library card, archive card, and go in, and they gave us a box, and we had to be very careful, and, it was this room. It was almost like if you go get a safety deposit box, and, they don't let
Yeah.
you out of that room with any of those files.
Which is good.
Right, because some of them are, over 100 years
A
old.
lot of them are. Most of them are.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody had opened your family's file in 100 years.
I was afraid I was going to open it and it was going to all fall apart.
Right, and they actually keep some of them in like plastic, coverings so that they don't fall apart because the paper was really thin and fragile, and so. But there's a lot of really interesting information, generic. And the great thing is, like with all the National Archives, they're federal buildings. It's like a library. You just go in. It's free for anybody to access these records. Like you don't need to pay money. If you do it remotely and you have to make your copies, then you might have to pay a fee. But if you just walk in, anybody can check out. It doesn't even have to be your own family members. This is all like public record.
Yep.
So we've discovered, these are some of the ways that we've discovered and kind of how to search our roots. And it's just really important to like find out as much information, even something that you don't even think is like significant, like just where their story was. Because again, like the business they might have owned, a place they might have worked, because again, counties and cities carry deeds, business licenses, so many different things that you'd be surprised what you can turn up if you just kind of look just government records.
And really just don't do it yourself. Don't do this alone, because there are genealogy societies and clubs that meet in pretty much every city. Probably you could probably find some sort of genealogy group in any major city.
There is, yeah.
And so just attend one of those. Walk in and be like, and ask them for what they're doing, and maybe they have some resources as well, and they have different tricks.
And if you're trying to trace your family back to China, we have another really great resource to give you.
Yeah, My China Roots.
Our good friends over there, that's what they do, is they actually do a fantastic job of, and they helped, your family a little bit in tracing some of your relatives, or at least kind of a little bit of a family tree back to your village.
Yeah.
And they do it, and there's different levels. It's like, if they don't find anything, they'll tell you, like, hey, there's nothing more that we can find, this is all I have. But if they're like, well, do you want us to keep digging, like they'll actually keep digging, and they'll send somebody to that village,
they'll send you a report at the end with pictures, and
if you want to actually go over there, they'll actually take you to the village, and so there's a lot of wonderful resources to find, and I'm sure they have equivalent ones in other countries. But
quick shout out to mychinaroots.com.
That's right. And
and if you mention Finding Cleveland, they give you a 10% discount.
So
save
it's good
10%
to mention.
by mentioning Finding Cleveland if you go to mychinaroots.com.
They're really nice. They're legit. And so if you want to find out more about your roots, we just encourage you to Google is your friend, but so are government records and random strangers seriously, random strangers.
Yeah.
Like if you go, we actually just showed up and started asking questions in these small towns.
Complete strangers.
I know it's harder in like a big city like Los Angeles.
Well, that's why I was saying, if you can trace your roots to a small little town, then you might actually have a decent chance.
You might have a decent chance, like anywhere along the road. And so just to kind of enclose, like I don't think we actually told them, like at the National Archives, we ended up uncovering not just some important documents about like birth certificates and and other things, but we actually uncovered interrogations, which is what the immigration officers, the questions and answers they would, interrogate everybody coming in and leaving the country that were Chinese. And so they're like single spaced, like 14, 15, 16 pages worth of Q&A with your family members that basically say things like your great-grandfather was like, where were you born? Where was your father born? Where was your mother born? Things you had no idea, like the answers to, that were actually in these interrogations. Where was your house in China? Who was your uncle? Where did you go after San Francisco? I went to New Orleans. I went to Baton Rouge. And all of a sudden, we actually have this written history for your family. And when people ask us, like, hey, have you seen the files? Like, we're like, no, we didn't know about these files. And then that's why we went to the National Archives, because somebody told us you should check out these files.
Yeah, and I can't even remember who it was, but if you're listening, thank you.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple people, like somebody in New York.
There was at least 3 people.
There was at least 2 or 3 people.
After like third time, I was like, okay,
what are those?
Let's just go find out what this place is. And lo and behold,
it was a treasure trove of information that we just could not imagine. It pieced together so much of his, of our family's history. Again, I know everybody's discoveries may vary as far how detailed they are. We know we have friends that are African American that have a difficult time, I think, tracing the lineage because with obviously slavery, a lot of records weren't kept on the slaves, and so a lot of their heritage is a lot more difficult to trace. But you never know. I mean, we never thought we would find this much information about your family. We just thought we were going to visit a gravesite, go home, have a nice family vacation. Instead, we ended up doing, 4 more years of research and uncovering
it's
this,
still going on,
and uncovering this whole amazing history of your family.
but we forgot to mention
remarkable.
the one thing that they can do so easily to get started.
Which is?
Just talk to your relatives.
Oh, that's right.
Just talk to them. Find the oldest one and start with them.
Because if your parents are kind of a locked box like your dad was,
Just try to get their memory jogged.
find the chattiest family member that you can have. It could even be a cousin,
Yeah.
anybody that remembers, and get it now. And those of you who might be of the grandparent age, I really encourage you to write down, your history and what you can remember, and tell your kids and tell your grandkids now before it's too late, because a lot of this might be lost soon.
Yep.
Well, anyways, this has been hopefully a very helpful discussion for those of you who might be trying to trace your heritage based on our experience. Feel free to ask us any other questions and hit us up on our website, podcast.loveanddiscovery.com, or on social media at LDD Podcast. And as always, I'm Larissa Lamb.
And I'm only one.
And you've been listening to Love, Discovery, and Dim
Dim
Sum
Sum.
Podcast.
I like to eat dim sum. I like to eat it every day.